Yeah.
Then in the second set, you just seemed to it all click for you.
Hmm.
What kind of adjustments did you make at the end of the first set going into the second set?
Yeah, I mean, I broke her every time in the first. So I was like, holding serve is usually what I can do well. So I was just trying to hold serve. I really told myself just go as hard as I could. And then I thought my serve would click a little bit. Honestly, a lot of it, well, I did double fault some moments, but a lot of it was really the first ball. I was missing a lot of those or in the rally. So I was trying to pay more attention to that and making sure I was winning those rally points.
What seemed like a pretty straightforward win after the delay.
Yeah, rain. At least I wasn't like on the court when it happened. And yeah, Linda's not an easy player. I played her earlier this year. It was a 4-4 match. In the first set, a lot of breaks, but I was able to do well in the second.
On that topic, Coco, from the outside as a fan, fans think that the night session is the marquee slot. Like they
Yeah.
get mad when their favorite players get like disrespected, don't get the night session.
Hmm.
I know a lot of players actually don't like playing
Yeah.
like that because it screws up your schedule for the week. I mean,
Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit about kind of how you as a marquee player
Hmm.
kind of balance that high profile ticket?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it might impact my tournament.
Yeah, so I got lucky like the first part of my career because with the age rule, I wasn't really allowed to, they weren't really allowed to schedule me the second night match. Yeah, so all the night matches that I played were always the first on, if you notice that. But obviously now I'm older, so I can play the second night match. And like I said, last night I got really lucky. And then also, they scheduled the next match. But the problem comes like later in the tournaments where, you have one side of the draw playing the day sessions and then one side playing the night sessions. And then unfortunately, that side of the draw is the night sessions when they have to meet up in the semis or finals and they have to go turn around and play the day. That's always tricky. But yeah, I do understand like the fans wanting, that late night match in that prime spot. And there's been incredible matches in that moment. And in the Grand Slams, I think it's a little bit more manageable because there is a day in between matches. But I do think like in the 1 week tournaments, especially when the events aren't combined, it's a little bit more easier to spread the matches out because there's more courts. So I do think, there has to be a balance with it. And unfortunately, I think Alina and Iga said the same. There's not much players can do in that situation. We can fight. For me, when I had that night match against Marquetta, and that was because of the rain, I really fought for the not before 1:30 time. So that saved me a little bit of extra 30, or not before 2, that saved me extra 30 minutes in the morning. Which means a lot in sleeping terms. So yeah, but it's tough because the tournament's trying to work with TV and TV's working, so it's a lot of things that go on that people don't realize. It's not as easy as just saying let's move all the matches up because we still have to sell our sport. But yeah, there definitely has to be some type of compromise. I know that the player council is working on it pretty hard, but there's not much they can do, to be honest.
It's not too late now, but these days there's a prospect of players playing till 1, 2, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Last week with Rebecca. Curious, as a player, what you think about that?
Yeah, like I mean, I get the whole business side of it. Like last match, I was the second night match, and like luckily it worked out fine for me. I started right at 8:30. Most of the times, especially in the Grand Slams, it doesn't happen. I do agree, like starting a match late, especially after 11, kind of sets you up for a rough tournament, to be honest. And I don't really think it's fair all the time. And, the situation last week in Montreal, even like when I played and I finished against Marquetta at like 10:30, they were trying to put me at 1 o'clock the next day, which meant warming up at 11:15, which means waking up at like leaving at the hotel at 9 and waking up at 8 and finishing at 10:30. By the time you get to the hotel, that hotel was like 40-minute drive away. By the time you get back to the hotel and go to sleep, that night I went to bed at 1:30, and that was like me going really fast through press. That was when I only had 3 questions with Courtney. So that was like a smoother night. But it still was rough waking up the next day, and it does affect you. That first set against Jess, my legs felt really flat. And her match, she finished even later at 3 a.m., which is insane, and she's right. It does set you up like for a terrible week. So I do think that some of the tournaments, especially the 1 week tournaments where there's not that extra day, have to do better. The rain was that week was pretty. It was 100% chance of rain at 6 o'clock we knew. I wasn't in Montreal. I was on the plane here to Cincy, and I knew they weren't playing that 6 o'clock match. But you still have to be there. So I do think that there's adjustments that have to be made, especially in those one-week tournaments where there's no day off in between. Personally, I think they could have maybe moved that match to the second stadium court, because then it sets up a bad for that person, and also like the fans in the final didn't see a quality match for the final, because unfortunately Lumila had a tough week, and it was amazing that she was even able to go out there and play. So yeah, I think there has to be adjustments made. I think all the players agree, but also there is a business side of it. But I think that maybe the quality matches will attract more fans when the players are ready.
You're one of the many players who slide on hard courts. I'm writing about an article about that.
Oh, cool.
I'm curious, like, how that came into your game, and like I've talked to a lot of players, and some, like Tommy Paul said, he's trying to stop sliding. I'm
Yeah.
curious, like how that's developed in your game.
Yeah, for me, I try not to do it so much when I'm on the run, like from side to side, but sometimes those drop shots you kind of have to. But it's not really something I think about before I do it. It just kind of happens. I think really there's been like 3 times where I'm like, okay, I'm going to slide. And a lot of times I hope it goes as smoothly, because hard court is, sometimes you'll just get to a stop and be stuck there. So I think it's much better when you actually get to the ball, but I do think it is a little bit of an advantage when you're like on those really wide stretch just to get one more ball back. But it's definitely a lot safer and much more easier to attack when you're like actually in stands. So I agree with Tommy that the less sliding on hard court, the better. Whereas clay, you use it a lot more offensively. But yeah, I agree with him on that.
Do you know how it came into your game?
No, I think just me wanting to get to the ball, and your brain figures out that, hey, this is the pathway I have to take to get to the ball. So it wasn't something I learned. It wasn't anything that no one taught me. I never really spent time practicing the slide in practice. It's just something that happened.
Looking into your match tomorrow, Jasmine Paolini.
Yeah.
You played her a few years ago in Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember from that match that might help you tomorrow?
Yeah, I remember I was up a little bit. I think it was up like a break or 4-1, and she came back. It was like I think I was up on both sets, and it was a long match. I think it was 3 sets. And yeah, she's a tough opponent. She's always going to fight, and she always has the opportunity to get back into the match. So yeah, I know tomorrow I think I'm just going to have to take every opportunity that I can get and expect one more ball to come back. I think that's what she does well. She's really scrappy, but she also can play like offensively well sometimes. So she's not an easy opponent, to be honest. I mean, her ranking is not as high, but, I think she's one of those players that you really when you step on the court, you have to know you have to take care of everything, despite, her. I think she was a qualifier this tournament, but that means nothing. And, yeah, I remember that match very well. So hopefully this time it's a little bit smoother, but, I don't think so. So I'll just try my best to win.